All right. John McEuen, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Jeff.
And where are you coming to us from? I know you're in the middle of a move. You've sort of been around a lot over the different places over the past couple of years.
Looking where I am. I'm in Florida, in Tampa, moving to Nashville.
What prompted the move?
Heat. It's too hot in Florida. And it's, to be right up front about it, this is the fourth quarter of my game, right?
Okay.
And isn't the fourth quarter the most exciting usually? Football, whatever, basketball, I don't know how they do tennis, but you know, the fourth quarter is a good one. And it's going to be a good one in Nashville. I've got a lot of friends there, musicians and writers and and it's going to be a good time.
And how is obviously 2020 has been challenging for everybody. How's it been for you?
It's been a challenge, yes. But I've decided several months ago, I started doing podcasts, not my own, but I did about 23 or 4 other people's podcasts. And then I have my XM radio show that I do every month that runs 7 times on Sirius XM. And that keeps me busy a full day to get that knocked out. I send them one show and they play it 7 times in that month. And I'm working on some book projects and a recording project that I have to get to Nashville to finalize.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it's obviously challenging not being able to be in front of a live audience, but it's nice that you're still getting to collaborate with other people.
Well, the live audience is missed, although I did 2 shows in September and 2 in October. They were very social distanced and all that. They were very well done. It was weird to play on a stage in a field in a college lawn area and have every chair 6 feet apart, you know, for about 2 or 300 people. But that was one of them. Another one was at Ruth Eckerd Hall here in Tampa, but it was in the atrium of the hall where it would usually hold 400 people, and they had it set up for 120, and that worked out. And I miss the live for sure, but I've got these other things going on that the writing projects are taking some time, and the move is this is my studio all packed up, ready to go. You can see things are not exactly pretty. They're ready to go to get to Nashville.
Did you previously do a lot of recording from home?
I do mixing here. I do voice tracks for the XM Sirius show and mix things occasionally. And I don't do a lot of recording though. I have what I have to when the opportunity arises. I've done that a few times, but I like studios.
Yeah, I mean, it was challenging for recording studios, especially in New York City and some of the bigger cities, even before this. So it'll be curious to see how long it is for them to bounce back after all this.
I don't think they're going to all bounce back, but the ones that do will be good ones, I bet. And it's the same thing in Nashville. You know, ever since Pro Tools and Nuendo and stuff like that came along, about half the studios in Nashville ended up closing because people had their own setups in their home studio. And in fact, I know two people that have really good setups, and I'll have a decent one and working on stuff. But you prove that you only need one microphone. Boy, do I love that album, Made in Brooklyn. And the sound on that record it's got to be the best sounding record that I have made. I couldn't believe how well the drums and the guitars and everything came out. They came out better than if it had been multi-tracked. and they sounded better. It was just, we messed with where everybody was spaced around the microphone. And with some songs that had only four or five people, that was understandable how it could come out. But when you got up to 10 and 12 people, it was really amazing how great that microphone is. Some people, I tell people this about the Made in Brooklyn album, that, some people say, yeah, we've got a lot of great microphones. We got some 10 and 12, $15,000 microphones. And I say, well, this is one microphone that's about 150,000 or more. It's really does a job.
And obviously, you've recorded a lot of different ways over the years. Is it the Chesky record the only time you've recorded in a church?
No, about the third time, but it was a perfect church. The echo was really a good 5 second echo if you listen for it, and you didn't need to use a lot of chamber stuff or anything. Just hit that guitar, and that natural room filled it up. And the electric guitar on She Dark the Sun that David Bromberg played, the only electric instrument on the album, had to put, I don't know if you remember, but we had to put the amp kind of far away, and because everybody else was acoustic, and that church gave it a perfect echo.
And it's for a church, it has a lot of carpet that a lot of churches don't also, which I think that really helps. It dampens
Hmm.
where you need it to. Can you talk a little bit about sort of when you get into music? What other artists inspired you? When did you know that you wanted to be a musician?
Well, I knew that I wanted to play the guitar when my brother was playing the guitar. I was 17 years old and I had to learn something. I liked spending time with him. He was a great guy. And so I started learning guitar for 6 months, but I couldn't play anything that he didn't know because he taught me everything that I knew. Some people might say, "Yeah, you taught me everything you know," and that person might say, "No, I taught you everything you know." So it was kind of like that. And when I was 17 and a half, I went to see a group called the Dillards at a coffee house in LA, in Orange County, actually, the Paradox. And I didn't know what the Dillards were. I just knew they were on the Andy Griffith Show. And I sat there in the audience waiting for that announcer to say, let's bring them out from Salem, Missouri, the Dillards. And they hit the stage and just took me away. Lightning fast bluegrass and sometimes slow, sometimes funny songs. They were the perfect example of a cross between the Smothers Brothers and Flatt and Scruggs. And I'd never paid any attention to Flatt and Scruggs. Well, not yet. And I started watching the Dillards so much that I'd go see them 3 or 4 nights a week, and wherever they were playing around LA. Because back in those days, there were a lot of clubs, and there were 7 different clubs, and they'd play one for a week, take a week off, play another one for a week, and then play another one. Over a period of a couple months, they'd always be kind of playing. It seemed like, and I got to see them up close and hang out and learn music from Doug Dillard, the great banjo player. That, geez, he was hot. And then when I'd go home at night, I'd put on Lightning Hopkins. You know about him, I bet.
Hmm.
Lightning Hopkins records and blues albums. That was my escape from from bluegrass. You know, it was just like bluegrass, only a lot slower. Lightning was a great escape, and he had great music that he played. And so I started listening to the Dillards, and by the next year, Doug Dillard had suggested a few people like Jimmy Martin to listen to, and Bill Keith, and I also got into Flatt and Scruggs at the same time because they were really interesting and hot and good. And when I'd been playing for about a year and a half, my brother convinced. My brother was 5 years older. He passed away last year, just this past couple months ago. And
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, it was a tough time. But when I was before the Dirt Band, before the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band started, before there was one even in existence, we convinced our father that we should take a pickup truck and drive to Texas and Missouri and go see some of his clients. My father was in the diesel equipment business. And starting at about 15 years old, I was steam cleaning diesel engines and parts and getting gunk all over me. And but I got to drive the forklift, and that was fun. I was only 15 or so, and I made 25 cents an hour. But after a year, I made 50 cents an hour. And then music came along. And it was a business that he worked out of Long Beach. He had about 110,000 square feet of stuff, junk, surplus, government, army, navy, whatever, diesel equipment. And we said, we ought to go we got to take some of that. Don't ship that stuff to Brownsville. Let us take it. We'll take it in the pickup, and we'll go pick up some stuff in St. Louis. It was a different time back then. And we got in the pickup and drove saw the clients, but made sure we spent a couple days in Nashville and made it to the Grand Ole Opry. Now, the Grand Ole Opry was sold out on a hot August night when we got there, a Saturday night, and I couldn't get a ticket. I couldn't get a ticket. So I walked around to the back window and looked in. I don't know if you've ever seen the Ryman, but the north side windows would open up like that, and they let air in because the place was not air conditioned. And it was a hot August night. And right when I looked in, Lester Flatt said, "We're going to bring out, Earl and I are going to bring out Mama Maybelle Carter to do the Wildwood Flower." And I'd been listening to Maybelle for a couple of years. I'd been listening to the Carter family and Flatt and Scruggs. And I said to my brother, "I'm going to record with those people someday." What a date! What a dream! I didn't have a band. I knew 22 songs or something, but I'm going to have to learn some stuff. And 5 years later, we started "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" album. So something worked right. 6 years later, actually. Uh, yeah, 6 years. And that worked out. And when we did the Circle album, we recorded two-track to a two-track Studer, 30 inches per second. And what was laid down, what was played in the studio, went on the master tape. Now, at the time, that was a little unusual we started with a 16-track and the two-track, and we did one song on the multi-track, and Bill, being the producer, and Bill McEuen, he was also the manager, and he took photographs. He said, "Let's get rid of the multi-track and we're going to run this two-track. It sounds too good." And back in those days, when you mastered from a two-track master that was directly from the studio, it sounded so much better than if it had been a two-track mix of a multi-track. And Mix Magazine did a 7-page article on the album, which is now in the Grammy Hall of Fame. And it's also in the Library of Congress. It's also in the top 5 on Amazon, has been for the past year and 3 months, ever since Ken Burns did the country music show, calling episode 6, "Will the Circle Be Unbroken?" And I got to close that out. Thank you, Ken Burns. I did about 20 minutes at the end about the album.
Did you have any
And
idea when you were recording the album at the time that it would get all those accolades and probably be the album you're most remembered for?
oh no, most remembered for. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, that's a high bar to clear for future projects, is it not?
It's a side project that I knew when we were recording it, because I when I said to my brother, I want to record with those people someday. I meant it, and I had to get good and good enough, not as good as they were, but and it came around when I asked Earl Scruggs. I was taking him back to a club in Colorado one night to Loggie's. He was there with the Earl Scruggs Review. That's his sons and Josh Graves. And I'm driving him back to the hotel. Earl, driving. Would you consider? Would you think? Would you maybe? How about? What is it, John? Would you record a couple songs with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band? Well, I'd be proud to. I almost fell out of the car. And the next week, Doc Watson was at the same club, and I asked him the same question, a little more to the point. I hadn't met him yet. His son Merle introduced me to him, and Merle said, "Oh, this is a good idea. I got to introduce you to Daddy." And that went well. I put him on the phone with my brother from the dressing room, which sounds easy nowadays, but we had to find a 50-foot cord to run a phone up to the dressing room. And they talked for 20 minutes, and Doc said he wanted to do it. And Bill on the phone later that night said, "I'm going to get Merle Travis." I had no idea if we could get Merle Travis. We knew him because we worked with him in 1966. We did 10 days at the Ash Grove, which is a famous club that is now called the Improv in LA, Hollywood. And we did 10 days with Merle Travis, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Jug Band days. And Merle Travis said yes. Then it started coming together, and 8 weeks after I asked Earl that question, we were in Nashville rehearsing. We rehearsed for a week because most of the songs were done on the first or second take. And we had to do first takes. You're not going to get Roy Acuff to do more than one take. He knows the songs. They're his songs. Maybelle Carter, you knew you could get her right on the first take. Merle Travis, first take guy. We'd scheduled 5 hours to record Merle Travis. We were done in an hour and a half, all the songs we did with him. And anyway, the album got made and done, and that was because of an album called Uncle Charlie and His Dog Teddy, which was in 1970. Jerry Scruggs had played that for his father. "Daddy, I think you might like this album. It's got some banjo on it." And Earl liked the banjo, and he liked the group. The singers were like Jeff and Jimmy were singing like Everly Brothers. Les Thompson played mandolin, and we did some instrumentals. One was Earl's "Randy Lynn Rag," and they canceled the Opry appearance they had a couple of weeks later to come to the concert in 1970. Gary brought him to the concert. The whole Scruggs family showed up at the dressing room door, and my brother videotaped that on an old Sony black and white Betamax. I'll send you the video if you want. And that was really fun. But Uncle Charlie had 3 hits on it, so we could tell the record company what our next album is going to be. And the record company president, Mike Stewart, said, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to sell 10 of these, but you're so passionate about it, you and your brother, that I'll put up the money." Okay, how much? He put up $22,000 for the whole project to pay the artists, the hotels, the studio, the tape, and he told me years later that was one of his most proud albums. He had 3 albums on his office wall. Tina Turner, her first album away from Ike that Mike Stewart had made happen. The John Lennon album, the first solo John Lennon album, and the Circle album. And it was really quite a statement from a guy that was often thought of as a powerful businessman. He also loved music. Anyway, so that went on. The Dirt Band was together. We went out and worked and different things. And the rest is history. 10 years later, we started getting into country music out of Nashville. And that's where I met John McEuen in those early days. I met him in 72, actually, and have known him through that period. David Bromberg, I met him one night in Philadelphia at the Main Point Coffee House. I'd gone to see Mr. Bojangles' writer, Jerry Jeff Walker, to tell him that we were going to put out his song as a single. He was too drunk to sing. He was laying on the dressing room floor. There were about 20 people there at the club at the end, by the end of his show, and David Bromberg did Bojangles for us, which is on the Made in Brooklyn album. And I had him tell that story, and we did it. Now, that song is such a powerful song that I don't know if you remember, Jeff, but I just looked around and said, "You all know Bojangles. What key? D? Yeah, D. Okay, D. Yeah, I'll look at everybody when you're supposed to solo. Okay, here we go. Let's do it." And it came off like we were playing in your kitchen. It was just wonderful. Thank you, Norman and David Chesky, for making Made in Brooklyn happen.
Can you? I mean, I've heard the story of how you met, but can you talk about the relationship with Steve Martin and how you've influenced each other over the years? Because obviously he played a part in the Made in Brooklyn album as well.
Now, Made in Brooklyn album is kind of like my own little Circle Beyond Brooklyn album. I incorporated people that I'd worked with over the years, and one of them was Steve Martin. Now, Steve, I met him when we were both 16 years old and hanging around the magic shop in Disneyland, trying to get a job. We weren't playing music yet. We just wanted to work in the magic shop in Disneyland. We were living in that area. We got the job. 16 years old, working in Disneyland. And we celebrated by having lunch in Tomorrowland. I had a tuna sandwich. Uh, it was great. I worked there with Steve concurrently, you might say, two different magic shops for 3 years. And the third year, the five-string banjo came into our life. And I was able to pick things off records a little faster than Steve, or things that he couldn't figure out. And he's an excellent student. I'd show him how I played something. He'd pick up about a third of it. Okay, I got enough. And he'd go on and jumble around. Well, over the years, he started writing some music. And well, my brother was managing Steve's starting around 1970. Now, the Disneyland years were like 65, 64, 5, and 3, 4, and 5, and 6, some of 6, 66. And then music came along, and then the Dirt Band came along. But Steve came along and started being funny around 1970 and started working on stage around 1973. And I got my brother to manage him. Bill ended up producing his albums. Steve made 4 albums that sold a total of 9.5 million copies. And Bill was managing the Dirt Band and a couple other people. And I'd work on the music on Steve's album. And I did the music for his specials, the first 2 specials on NBC. That was my first film scoring work. Did I bite off almost more than I could chew? I mean, this is 1978. I'm doing a film score for NBC, and it's like, how do you get this to be in sync? How do you get this to? Had to learn how to write the cues and the book. But it was a good training. And fast forward throughout the years, Steve and I have remained friends. And 10 years ago now, I produced his album, first bluegrass album, The Crow, he called it. New songs for the five-string banjo. And we won a Grammy with that. Yoo-hoo! And he didn't think his music was going to do much. But when I heard those songs, he has a really good ear for melody. And he was, he doesn't have a good ear for chords or arrangement. I went over to his house in New York City. One of the reasons I moved to New York. I moved there to meet Norman Chesky. I didn't know it, didn't know who Norman Chesky was. But I knew I'd do something with Steve. I did about 20 Joey Reynolds shows. I played with Pete Seeger. I played with Levon Helm at his Midnight Ramble on his 70th birthday. That was fun. Things like that you can do when you move to New York. So I'm sitting in my apartment on Upper East Side. The phone rings. Hey, John, this is Steve. What are you doing? I said, nothing right now. Why? Would you want to come over here? He lives on west side of Central Park. And would you want to come over here and listen to some banjo tunes I've got on my computer? I said, well, did you write them? He goes, yeah. And I go over to his place and he plays his computer. They're just banjo tunes. Each one's played two times through. And they're really good. They're clean. They're whatever. He had six of them. I said, can I take a copy of those? And I took them away. I said, they're really good, Steve. Give me a week. And I took them and I striped them into my Pro Tools, using them as a basic track, and did a bunch of overdubs like bass and guitar, mandolin, and I moved things around with the Pro Tools, you know how you can do, and I sent it back to him. He got the CD about 1 o'clock, and about 1:40, my phone rings. I FedExed it to him, and I knew when it was coming. And I see, oh, that's Steve calling. He's listened to the CD. I don't answer. He calls again an hour later. I don't answer. And finally I answered the third one. He goes, man, that stuff, I had no idea. That really sounds good. Yeah, Steve, I told you your stuff is really good. Now, if we work together and I produce the album, we can make something that shows a lot of people that it's really good. And we did that.
What do you
It
think
was
he brought to your project?
um, that was yeah, that's right. That was bringing that around to that. I called him up and said, "Hey, Steve, I need you to frail the banjo on a song by what's his name, Warren Zevon, that Matt's singing." He knew Matt, uh, and he said, "Sure, I got to rehearse it though." And Steve is a rehearse freak, you know. Matt and I go over to his house and we go through it once, we go through it twice, we go like the fourth time we're going through it, it ends. Digga, 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 digga. Okay, let's do it again. One, two, three. It's like end, start, end, start, end, start at the next one. And he rehearsed it. He was all ready for it. And he came in prepared. You know, he took an Uber to the studio.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He, he took an Uber to the studio because it's a lot cheaper. Steve could have bought anyway. Uh, and Norm had a check to give him that he was paying everybody the same. And I said, Norm says, "Here, you give him the check." I said, "No, you give him the check. It's your record company, and he knows how much it is, and it will be in the bank on Monday." I knew Steve was like that, but he was very professional. He came in, he sat, he played, did it in one take, and as everybody did on Dirty Life and Times he played on. I was playing mandolin. I knew it needed a frailing banjo. I called Steve because I knew he could do it. I wasn't just getting the star, you know. Although, yeah, I'm glad I got him for that purpose too. But yeah, he fit right in. And John Carter Cash, I loved calling him up and saying, "I want you to come to New York and record with me, and I want you to sing one of my favorite songs of your dad's. I still miss someone." He goes, "Oh, that's my favorite too." Well, can you sing it? Yeah. Can your wife to be sing harmony with my wife? Yeah. It's a very homegrown project, you know. And Andy Gessling, for those that don't know, Andy Gessling was the genius of that band, Railroad Earth. He plays everything. Andy was a great guy. I'm in Upper East Side. I got a job at the Iridium because it was the place to play, and and no, it wasn't the Iridium. It was the other place was the place to play. A wine company thing. What was that called?
City Winery?
Yeah, City Winery. And I get this email. Hi, would you like me to sit in with you at City Winery? And I write back, well, what do you play? He says, well, my name's Andy Gessling. I didn't know the name Andy Gessling. And I play, he sends this list of things he plays. It's really this long, you know. I says, well, don't bring the banjo, but everything else is fine. Oh, I don't want to rehearse. And that was to see if he was really good. He says, I'll rehearse beginnings and endings, but everything that happens in the middle, it'll be different if we rehearse it. So let's just go do it instead and see what it is. And he fit into that first sitting in show. And then he played with me another 5 times. And then this album came around, and he brought his, his saxophones, his clarinet, his mandolin, his dobro, his guitar, and put them to work. Also, not the hammered. He he has a zither in his house. A zither is an instrument that nobody plays. It's too hard. Pluck the you got to pluck the strings and fret them and stuff. And I mean, you fret them this way and you pluck them this way. And we were doing my favorite dream, a song written by Boudleaux Bryant, and nobody had recorded it before. And I asked Andy, I said, "Can you do an intro? Can you play Favorite Dream through on the zither? And at the end, we'll modulate to the key we're going to do it in. But I need you to do it on the zither because it's such a that zither. It sounds like a time machine has taken you back to the previous century or something, you know." And he did it, and it was beautiful. And Matt does the modulation, and he sings this song like he wrote it. My Favorite Dream. Del Bryant brought it to us. Del Bryant from BMI. His father and mother were Felice and Boudleaux Bryant, and they were a couple of America's best songwriters. Things like Kathy's Clown, All I Have to Do Is Dream, Rocky Top, Love Hurts. Their list is long. And Del called me up when we were doing the album and said, "Hey, would you like to do one of my dad's songs?" I'd known Del for 20 years and been friends. And, well, probably, but, well, I've got some songs that nobody's recorded. He made them, he made a tape in the living room. I said, yeah, getting more interested. And anyway, he sent a tape with 3 or 4 songs, and Matt picked Favorite Dream. And I'm really glad he picked it because it just really cooks along. It's a real sweet song. And Andy played, and David Amram played a beautiful flute part, especially on the word robin. Yeah, he plays a little flute lick that sounds just like a robin flying through the record. David Amram was one of the players that I called because he and I had been playing around New York oh, what is it, Cornelia Street Cafe. I took him to the Joey Reynolds show, and I knew he was good, but I didn't know from the first time I played with him. I didn't know how good he was or is. Um, and it's just Amram plays flute, he plays percussion, he plays tin whistle, two at once. And let's see, what did he do on Favorite Dream? He played flute, but I played a long wooden flute, like one, and that was really good. And then I still miss someone is what I was talking about with John Carter Cash, and that came out wonderful. That was this really a good one. I love this album. I love the Miner's Night Out is one of my favorite cuts on there. I wrote Miner's Night Out with the idea that what would it have been like to be in a gold camp in Colorado in the 1880s or so. And the workday was over, and the banjo player sits down and plays a few notes on the banjo, and somebody hears them. And they, you mean like this? And then somebody else hears that, and they play a few licks. And they're just kind of noodling around, but then the song starts and proceeds to progress. A song that is kind of like a Celtic um, instrumental. I was really happy with the way that came out.
You briefly
Acoustic,
mentioned the Iridium. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you came to meet Norman?
yeah, playing the Iridium was really something I did a couple times. And one of the times, the Iridium is the jazz club, for those of you that don't know. It's in New York City, right on Broadway. And you walk outside and you say, "This is Broadway. Let's go back inside and do the set." And we did a couple sets there, and you load out by going down the hall. And typical New York loadout, you load out through another building, the neighboring building that is on whatever 50th Street, 50th type of street that is, or maybe it's 62nd or something. But the Iridium's on Broadway. The Iridium's on Broadway. You go in and go down, but you load out over here. And I, I was loading out. Matt, you bring the car around, and I'll get the stuff up to the sidewalk. Okay. So it took him. Had to go a half hour away to get the car, and I'm got this elevator full of stuff, and it finally gets up to the ground floor, and I start getting things out. I block the elevator with one instrument, and I take two at a time, two at a time, two at a time. You know, 'cause we had a bunch of stuff to get to the car, and the guy, the doorman, "Hey, you can't block the elevator like that." I said, it's midnight. I'll be done in 5 minutes. You can't block the elevator like that. Look, I'm almost done. Well, right then, Norman shows up. And he's getting into the New York argument with the guy. Hey, don't bother, don't hassle him. Don't you? Hey, wait a minute, guys. You, whoever you are, Norman, I'm talking to, grab a couple things. I'll grab a couple more, and I'll be done, and we'll be out the door. So he does that, and we get out the door on the sidewalk, and he thought, he said, "You look familiar." I says, "Well, my name's John McEuen. I just played the Iridium." He goes, "Nitty Gritty Dirt Band?" And we started talking. And I got in the car when Matt showed up 20 minutes later. And I said, "I just met a guy that says he owns a record company up in that building. And he wants to talk about doing an album." "Yeah, sure he does. Let's go." I mean, you don't just meet somebody in New York that wants to do an album and end up doing anything with them, do you?
Well, it's like the
Well, you
Los
do.
Angeles let's do lunch thing, right?
Pardon?
It's like the Los Angeles let's do lunch thing.
Right. See, in LA, they say, "Let's do lunch." They don't with you. They don't mean this month. They don't mean whatever. In New York, you say, let's do lunch. Say, okay, how about right over there? That's all. Yeah, it's a different world. I said, Matt, get LA out of your consciousness. Uh, this guy is the president of this label. And I don't know the label, but you know something? The next day, well, let's see. And I don't know the label, but he's interested. He's going to come see us tomorrow night in New Jersey. Matt and I went out to eat, and oh, it was really wonderful. And in that time, before the next show, I called up an engineering friend, an engineer that works for Skywalker Ranch. You know Skywalker Ranch out in Mill Valley, George Lucas's place.
Yeah, I know an engineer that works there. I wonder if it's the same person.
Bob Edwards.
Ah, no, different person.
Well, he's been there for 25 years, and I said, "Hey, Bob, this guy Norman Chesky wants me to do an album. What do you know about Chesky Records?" And he says, "John, there's only two things you say to Norman Chesky. One is yes, sir, and the other is thank you, sir." Why do you say that? He goes, "I use Chesky Records to get my system going in the morning. I'll put on a Chesky album because they sound the best." And I went, okay, I want to have this meeting. And that was good enough for me. Not that I was that doubtful, but it was a wonderful thing. And he came out to New Jersey, and I'd eaten something, and I was so sick I couldn't stand up. I had to do the show sitting on a stool. I dropped a capo on the floor, and I bent over to pick it up, and I had to say, "Hey, John," the other guy in the band, "can you get that for me?" I almost fell over. I mean, I was I was very ill. Before at 4 o'clock, I couldn't stand up. At 5 o'clock, I still couldn't stand up, but I could make my way to the bathroom. 6 o'clock, the room is still spinning. 7 o'clock. Anyway, by 8 o'clock, I could get on stage. The place was packed. I didn't want to cancel, and I had musicians there and people, and Norman came to see me, and I had to say I can't meet him. I after the show, I just couldn't. Uh, I had to sit down for about an hour, but he persevered, and we talked on the phone, and the idea of the album came together. I told him what I wanted to do. Wanted to call a bunch of people, and had to cancel. We set up a date, had to move it, set up another one. I can't get Bromberg, set up another one. And I got everybody. John McEuen was just great. He did She Dark the Sun in a key that we thought was impossible. Did it in G. Usually, usually this is a song that is high and you sing it in this key, you know. Well, he was going to do it in this key. And a step and a half higher, and you listen to this record and you hear him nailing it. It's like, wow, that's cool. He did it. John McEuen came. Uh, Martha Redbone. Martha Redbone is a great New York artist. She's a Native American. And she and I had done an album based on William Blake poetry. We had taken William Blake's word and kind of, well, what if he had immigrated to America in 1850? And what if he'd gone to Appalachia? It's actually Appalachia, and put music, mountain music, to his Songs of Love album. And we made an album, Songs of Love, that is all acoustic with that idea in mind. And when this album came around, I called Martha. I said, "Martha, would you want to do I Rose Up?" And she jumped right in. And she sang harmony on a couple other songs. Oops, sorry, I didn't make noise. And she sang harmony on a couple other songs. It was really wonderful. I Rose Up was great because John McEuen sang a verse, Matt sang a verse, Martha sang several verses, and it was a one take song and it was just a hoot. I arranged it so the last time through we'd modulated to a good banjo key because I wanted to play some good banjo, and I did. One of the things about the Chesky album was getting everybody into recording with one microphone without headphones, without monitors, because people just didn't know. We don't have we don't have any monitors. Can I have headphones? No, we're not. You can't use them. And one of the first songs we did was in a D minor guitar tuning. I tuned my guitar to D minor to play Brooklyn Crossing. And that was what we rehearsed. We went through it once to rehearse it, and then we recorded it, and then we listened to it, and everybody was like this. They put on the headphones. They start looking around. It's like we were still out there playing. It sounds live. And the thing that amazed me when I got done with this record, which was 2 days later, uh, that when you're playing it back on a computer, for instance, you're playing it back and it sounds like something's coming out from over here. It sounds like there's an instrument over there on the edge of my table. There's one over there. It plays back in surround sound, in what seems like surround. I gave my daughter an early copy. She said, Dad, I wish you told me about this album because I'm home alone and I thought somebody came in behind me. And then I had some emails from people that played this in my van and it sounded like I had the band in the back seat as well as in front. It wasn't just two speakers of music anymore, blaring straight at you, like everybody's sitting up there. It's a magic process you guys use that spreads those frequencies around in a way that really made this album shine for me.
So obviously you had a lot of great collaborators on Made in Brooklyn, but you've had a lot of great collaborators throughout your career. When I was looking
Oh, I've
up
been
for
very
research,
lucky. Yeah,
there's a great list of names, a lot of which I've heard of the stories of you working with, but there were a few that kind of surprised me I wanted to ask you about.
sure.
What did you do with Tommy Lee Jones?
I did a film score for his movie, The Good Old Boys. The Good Old Boys was set in Texas in 1906, and somebody had pitched him that I was the guy to score his movie. I had a meeting with him, and he goes, "Okay, we start Monday. Can you get to Texas?" Yeah, yes, sir. I lived with Tommy Lee Jones for a month in Alpine, Texas, while they were filming because he wanted me around the set. It was a little bit unusual, and then he would listen. Tommy Lee, how about when you have dinner? At the end of the dinner, Huey Calloway, his character, who's trying to get something going with Sissy Spacek, Spring Renfro. What if she gets up and goes to the piano and plays a song? And he listens and falls in love with her. And that sounds like a good idea. Give me the song. Give me a song. And she didn't play the piano, but I had to teach her. I had 3 weeks to teach her how to play this song in the key of C. And then I said, foolishly, how about we have the farmer guy strum an auto harp, like just do on the downbeat, strum the auto harp for the chord, and the farmer wife, chink, chink, dum, chink, chink, it would be strum, chink, chink, strum, chink, chink, and then the piano would be going on top of that. Okay, so I wrote a song called For the Love of a True Woman's Heart, and they did it. They shot it live. The I suggested they shoot it live, And I had to say why I suggest that. One, it's possible. Two, it'll be faster. Three, you'll never get non-players to finger sync, lip sync, whatever. You're going to have to shoot over and over and over. And if you shoot it live, it's going to be good because they're good. They've got it down. They've got this one song down. And they shot it live and it put them 5 hours ahead on their shooting schedule because they did it in one take. I've written it so it starts the camera close on the piano, on the fingers, first 6 seconds. Then you pull back and see that it's Spring Renfro at the piano. And the camera keeps pulling back and it goes to the back of the room and around. And on its way, when it gets a third of the way back, is where the first auto harp and the mandolin come in. And then she sings. And anyway, it all worked great.
And the Doors.
The Doors, we were with the same agency, same talent agency. And people with the same agencies end up doing shows, even if they aren't compatible or don't look right or whatever. And we ended up doing 12 shows, 14 shows with the Doors, mainly on the East Coast. And that was really fun because it was fun because they were, Jim Morrison was really weird. And the band wasn't, they were good. But I wasn't a Morrison fan. Excuse me. I wasn't a Morrison fan myself, but I was an appreciator of the music. And we actually went over the Dirt Band, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, the Doors we played with in 1967. Yeah, 67. That was early on. Also, Bobby Sherman that year. Julie, 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 do you love me? Julie, Julie. You remember Bobby Sherman? You're too young.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of stuff that's from before my time.
Bobby Sherman, we did about a dozen shows with. And I went into his dressing room one night and asked him, I said, Bobby, does it bother you that the girls scream? Because he drew like from 9 to 18-year-old girls, two-thirds of the audience. The other third were the mothers of those girls, various ones. And he goes, no, they'd scream like this, ah, Julie, Julie, ah, they get louder when the song starts. He goes, no, I like it because I know something they don't. And I said, what's that? He says, I can't sing. When they quit screaming, my career's over. And I learned a lot from him, just from watching and stuff. He really put out. He was a great teeny bopper entertainer. He really worked that crowd. It's like Las Vegas with chocolate milk. You know, it was good.
Oh, and lest I forget, I should wish you an early happy birthday.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, December 19th, my birthday. I'll be 75. But David Amram just turned 90, and he's writing the symphony right now, so
That's
he keeps
impressive.
plugging away.
Yeah, so
Pardon?
I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about your career, about with Made in Brooklyn. Is there anything you want to share with the audience about what you have going on currently, something coming up?
Yeah, check out my Facebook, John McEuen Music. Check out Made in Brooklyn. It's the best sounding album I've made, and I'm extremely proud of it. Just read some of the reviews, and that will make you get one. That's something that you can't make people write good reviews. You can't make them write reviews sometimes, it
Hmm.
seems, even if they like something, right? You know? But I'm just really glad that that album is out and it's got some of my best music and some of my favorite music. I saved, I collected or whatever some songs. Since around 1982, I wanted to record She Dark the Sun. That was a song written by Bernie Ledden. He wrote that when he and I, right after he and I played together in 1968. The Dirt Band had 6 months. It broke up that year. And Bernie and I played together. Then he goes out to get the group, and the Dirt Band starts up again, and he writes this song. But I finally got it recorded. I wanted to record it. I Still Miss Someone. And the Warren Zevon songs, yeah, an overlooked artist. There's some good stuff on there. And then I wrote a few instrumentals. But it's the best sounding record I've ever made. I played banjo and fiddle, guitar, mandolin, and I got to do exactly what I wanted. And I thank Norman Chesky and Chesky Records for going along with that.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Well, like I said to my mom, thanks for having me.